The Trump administration's escalating trade war with India is facing backlash at home in the United States. A new survey by the US-based Democracy Institute showing 53% of Americans believe the US should not have imposed tariffs on India over its continued oil trade with Russia. Just 43% support the move. In fact, the response follows Trump's last week announcement, remember, when Trump slapped an additional second 25% tariff on India for its Russian oil purchase, bringing the total to 50%. And it is among the highest that the US has imposed on any country. Trump has also ruled out any trade talks with New Delhi until the tariff issue is resolved. And despite the rising tensions, the broader American view of India remains favorable. 64% believe that they see India's growing global economic influence as a good thing. Meanwhile, at home, economic pressures are mounting. Moody's chief economist has warned that more US industries are beginning to cut jobs. And according to a new Morning Consult poll, 6 in 10 Americans say that the Trump administration is contributing to their rising cost of living. And what's the reason? Stubborn debt, inflation, and stagnant wages. And with us on the broadcast from Chicago is Greg Swenson, who is a foreign affairs analyst and economist. Good to have you with us. Thanks very much for being here. I have to start off by asking you your assessment of those survey numbers and what they indicate about the sentiment on the ground as far as Trump's India tariff moves are concerned.
Yeah, I think the word you used, sentiment, is important here because the viewers, the voters, are constantly barraged with negative commentary about President Trump's economic policy. So I'm not surprised that the sentiment is negative, and that many voters in America that are polled, and I'm not sure about the credibility of that particular poll, but I think generally speaking, the polls are pretty consistent that people have a negative, the majority have a negative view on his policies. But that's the sentiment, and it's totally different than the reality. The reality on the ground is real wages are up 1.2% this year. This is after 4 years of the Biden administration where real wages were down 4% over his term. And so the inflation numbers came out today, 2.7. That's unchanged from June. It's below the 2.8% expectation. The lower energy prices are helping with affordability. So the interesting thing about the surveys is they talk about wages and cost of living, and those are actually quite manageable right now. There's been no evidence of inflation from the tariffs. You have a couple of isolated industries or sectors like appliances and tires, but those aren't really things that people need to buy every day. If you look at the overall cost of living, it's quite manageable. Cars, used cars, new cars, travel, all lower in July, year over year. So it's pretty interesting to see the divergence between what's really happening and the sentiment.
So are you saying that all is well on the ground, economically speaking? Because, we also have that statement coming in, for example, from the Moody's chief economist, who basically has warned about those job cuts in U.S. industries. Also that poll which gave us an indication of what the Americans think about the cost of living.
Right. It's interesting. And I think a lot of these economists are political opponents of the president. So there's definitely some bias in there. And they've sort of translated, political opinion into trying to translate it into empirical science, and it's just not working because what is happening on the ground is pretty positive. I mean, I think the most important factor is the one I mentioned, which is real wage growth. And that is happening right now. And yes, there are a couple of sectors that might be experiencing higher prices, but those, if anything, are one-time price adjustments from tariffs. But there's been no meaningful evidence of inflation from the tariffs. Of course, the caveat is that could happen, and maybe we haven't seen the full impact of the tariffs yet. But the expectation from consumers in America right now, the inflation expectations have gone down. And that's really interesting that, it's fallen for the second straight month. And so, again, I try to keep it in context. If you looked at it only 3 years ago, we had 9% inflation in the US. That was from too much money chasing too few goods. And right now we have a policy, economic policy from this administration that is very anti-inflation. It's deregulatory, so you're going to see more output from American businesses as the deregulation movement takes effect. That happened in his first term. We expect that to happen again. And then, of course, you have lower taxes with the big, beautiful bill. So we're very optimistic.
All right, remains to be seen how far that optimism really goes and what the expectations versus reality scenario really looks like in time to come and even right now. Of course, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for your perspectives.
Thanks, Molly. Thanks for having me.